Oh, I see nothing. I screwed something up, Chris. You can hear me though, right? There we go.
And
That was weird.
so,
Discord's being
so
funny. Oh no, Discord's being funny. This is what I get for messing with the system. We are live, Chris, though, so you can talk while I figure out why it's doing what it's doing.
we are always on time, Demonic Waffles. What are you talking about? Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to episode 80. It is 80. It is 80. That's why I thought it was appropriate to have an inappropriate thumbnail for to
Good job.
celebrate.
You know, like I said, initially it's not inappropriate until it's like the longer you look, the more you see.
I had to explain it to Ryan. So if you guys didn't catch it up, it's some like freaky ass Japanese sex toy. It's like a full suit. That's what the thumbnail is. The guy's got like fake breasts, and it's got like it's like an artificial like automated plunger thing going over his dingling there. And yeah, are you not immersed? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about. We'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, we Ryan was actually the one that brought up this topic. Yesterday yesterday.
I'll give a
week.
backstory as to why this topic came up because.
Okay, okay. Well, then before I let Ryan get into the backstory there, and I'm done stroking my goatee like the epic.
I was like stroking
epic
I was like, oh my god, where's he going? I don't. This podcast is over before it begins.
Anyways, welcome everybody to the show. Kiwi Demonic Waffles, Triangulator, and Je ne sais quoi, Savage Asylum, Savage Gamer Asylum. Yeah. Anyways, guys, welcome. As first in on the chat,
I like
we
that
really
name.
appreciate you guys. What?
Je ne sais
Savage.
quoi.
Yes, I know. It took me. Hey, I got it right, didn't I? And yeah, welcome to the show, guys. If you haven't already liked the video, please. It's a great way to kick off the video. Get some algorithm going there for us. Subscribe if you're not already. If you're new to the channel, and something that we always forget to mention, and it hit me the other day is just reminding everybody that the podcast is also on all the major podcast networks. So if you don't necessarily want to watch us, or you don't want to watch us live, or you don't catch us live, and you just want to listen to us while you work or whatever, which is how I consume podcasts. Consume.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on all those major podcast networks, and the podcast should be up usually the same night, if not the next day. So keep an eye out for that, guys. It's all the episodes are up there, even the episodes you can't, even the legacy episodes that were on the Virtual Boys podcast channel before it all came over to the grid here. So I think there's some gold over there. I don't know about you, Ryan.
Absolutely. If you want to hear him tell the story about the time he played Squadrons and everyone couldn't believe that he was in VR, you'll hear it about 20 times during the course of those 20
You know what? Thank you for reminding me. Like, let me tell you about this time I played Squadrons. You know what? It's a good story, and it's gonna come up again. Anyway,
I hope not. I could probably recite that story by line at this point. Before we get to the topic, Chris, what have you been playing that you can talk about? I guess first, Thursdays are kind of the release day. Shut up, Chris. Guys, we put out reviews for Another Fisherman's Tale and Walkabout Mini Golf. So you guys haven't checked out those reviews yet. They are on our channel, and both games, spoiler alert, are fairly enjoyable. So
and spoiler free. Something that
Walkabout spoiler free.
yeah. Actually, no.
Right, funny, I know.
No joke. I captured myself capturing so many hidden balls playing Walkabout when I was with you and when I was with Jason that when I was editing the video footage, I was like, damn it, you shouldn't be showing that. So I had to keep editing them out there. And I agree, Triangulator. Squadrons for PSVR 2. That reminds me, Triangulator, of a story when I was playing Squadrons. Yeah, so guys, check out those reviews if you haven't already. And yeah, I mean, today is Happy Walkabout Day, right? Ryan and I have been congratulating Walkabout for years now, especially myself, because I have more time than Ryan to play it. But I played the crap out of Walkabout Mini Golf. I've seen people in the comment sections on the video reviews saying, like, I don't get the hype. I don't understand necessarily why everyone loves this game. And there's just a simple fun about it. I guess I like mini golf in real life. Like, I rarely pass up a mini golf course. There's an ice cream shack that went up down the block from us, and they got a mini golf course on there, and you have no idea how excited that made me. But there is something about Walkabout Mini Golf, man. Like, I tell you, even this afternoon, I was playing Upside Downtown, which is where they just absolutely mess with gravity, and it is one of the most creative VR experiences I've ever had. Like I had like friends' balls like flying past my face because they're like changing gravity and flying past you. And it's I know, balls in my face. You're such a child. But yes, just like Triangulator said, I own it on PSVR 2, Quest, and PC now. And you know what? I don't even care because it's a fantastic game to play like with your spouse or your friends or family or whatever in the same room. It's not couch co-op. It's like what would you call it? Room co-op?
Well, it's headset co-op, so if you got enough headsets, then go crazy, really.
I mean, there is absolutely nothing cooler in VR, I would say, than playing in the same room in separate headsets. Like just there's like that vicinity and shared virtual reality. Like top time VR moments in my life is still is Space Pirate Trainer with you in my backyard.
That was pretty amazing.
That is still just some epic VR shit. But yeah, absolutely enjoyed the heck out of playing Walkabout on the PSVR 2. Yeah, go check out the review, guys, if you haven't already. And if you're on the fence for some reason and you haven't played it, I hope I sold it. I hope I sold it. And you know, the other review, which would be Another Fisherman's Tale. The one thing that you guys, I'm not going to spoil Ryan's review by talking too much about it, but the one thing I did want to ask you, Ryan, was would you say it still feels like that special VR gem that the first one did?
Like I said, without spoiling my review too much, it's not the same game as the first game. It really isn't. Where the first game you manipulated like scale, like you're playing with a model of yourself, while a giant version is like playing with you. Like it was this cool meta. I don't know what you would call it. It was just a really cool use of scale that hasn't really been done since that game or any other games that I'm aware of. And I thought for sure I said this at the beginning of the review, but I thought for sure they kind of build upon that. And instead, they go a totally new direction. And basically, instead of scale being the puzzle, now Bob, the fisherman's the puzzle. And now you have to like manipulate his body parts to solve puzzles. So it took me a minute to kind of get over that, I guess, and realize that once again, I've never played anything like this in VR before. Because, well, I guess now we're going to talk a little bit. But basically, if you throw your head, you still view the world from that vantage point, but you still control Bob via like thumbstick, and it's the way
a radio controlled car.
Yeah, but yeah. But he moves in the direction of his body. So if you press up on the joystick, he'll walk forward. But you're not.
Yeah,
but
like a radio controlled car.
Sure, but the hands are still tracked to your hands. So like you can. Make, right, and then when they start messing with that and playing with it, and like they make you go upside down later in the game, so now you're controlling him upside down, so it's inverted, and you're trying to move. It's nothing like it's nothing like it before. So is it as special? I don't think it's as special as the first one, only because I am a huge fan of like manipulating scale in VR and seeing giant things in VR. Always just tickles me in the right places because we honestly don't see enough. Like, even just seeing like a massive tower in VR, like it's. Every game that does it, I'm just like, oh man, it's so cool. Because most games kind of keep things down to like regular human scale, and I don't want that all the time. So without spoiling too much, it's not the same game, but it stands on its own. If you ever played the first game, don't worry about it. I will say that you can totally pick up Another Fisherman's Tale, and it's its own separate tale. And in fact, even will leaves it open to play the first game, which is coming to PSVR 2 later this year.
Oh, they're re-releasing it.
Yeah, they just announced that today.
Very cool. Very cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's like Ryan and I were looking at over our list, I guess, of games that we have to cover this month, and it is a puzzle month. So if you like puzzle games, holy crap! I mean, it depends on what headsets you got, I guess. But Fisherman's Tale and Firmament and Humanity and Red Matter 2.
Yep.
And I can't talk about Red Matter 2, guys, on PSVR 2, but
I can talk about the Quest version, and I can tell you I was blown away by the Quest version, and the PSVR 2 promises to blow the Quest version out of the water in regards to tech specs. So let's roll with go with that, but
I can't talk about Red Matter 2, but I will say that it could be a showcase title for your PSVR 2, like visual wise. That's all I'm going to say. Let's get into the topic here, I guess. let's get into the topic.
Before we get to it, sorry, but I'll tell my story. Guys, I'll be putting up codes throughout this episode. If you get a code, if you do claim the code, please just let me know in chat so I know, because like I can then I know I can take this thing down and put a new code up. So like the faster you let me know codes are taken, basically the faster I'll put more codes out there. And on that note, any PSVR codes will be North American codes only. And I think that's it. Transformers, very quickly. Transformers came out PS5, got the PSVR 2 treatment. It's it's the same game as the first game, minus a few little tweaks. I played it for about 5 minutes before I got bored again. It's a really boring on the rail shooter with Transformers. If you're looking to get it, just know that you're not getting anything like really original. If you're a Transformers fanboy, that'll do you. But if you're looking for something fun, maybe look elsewhere.
Fun doesn't live here.
No, it really doesn't.
The other game that came out this week, which I actually was hoping to try before we jumped into chat today, but I didn't, was Poker Stars VR came out for free, and it uses eye tracking. It also uses head haptics, I guess, like when you go all in your pulse thumps and stuff.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I'm actually really looking forward to playing that. I mean, Poker Stars has been this elusive title for PSVR headsets. It's been out on the other headsets, but I like a good game of poker, and the eye tracking, I think that's killer. Though it's not, I think, I don't know if that's why, but because of maybe the eye tracking and stuff, it's not cross-platform. Like where Walkabout is cross-platform, Poker Stars is PSVR 2 only. So, that can make it harder to fill lobbies, so hopefully that's something that gets patched in.
It's free, so I don't know. I'm sure it will. I don't know. I'm not as a guy who actually likes playing poker. The second you put free onto that, I just know it's just more of a mess around game than it is like a poker game, because there's no stakes. The stakes are nothing. So I'm looking forward to playing it. I've heard it's actually really fun. But as a poker player, or at least a former poker player.
So I have a question for you, Ryan.
Okay.
I'm reading chat here, and I actually disagree with you. I'm pretty sure PSVR 1 did use reprojection, or at least their version of it.
I'm sure they did on some games, but all the games just floated at 60 and they were fine with it. Like it was just 60 was...
No, I don't think so. That breakout box was doubling everything.
Was it?
Yeah. I'm almost 100% positive that it was only like developers had to hit... I thought it was a minimum of 45 frames.
It was 60.
I mean, if they had to hit 60, then I think it was...
They had to hit 60. They had to hit 60. 100%.
Now, I don't really know the answer to that, to be completely honest with you. I just always assumed, I wasn't a PC VR guy when we were PSVR gamers, like at least when we were talking about the tech. And so like the idea of space warp and reprojection technology, that was so PC. So I'm not exactly sure. We can talk about briefly just with the red matter thing while Ryan's looking up specs there. For those who haven't seen the specs that they're throwing on red matter, they're hitting 120 frames, no reprojections. That's native 120, and the resolution is crazy, and the lighting is crazy in it. And this is just what they're saying it, and I'm just going, yeah, sounds about right. But yeah, no, that is a very sexy ass game. And but the breakout box did double frames. I can verify that. That was one of the things that it was helping with. But
then my follow-up answer to that then will be, I'm trying to read this stuff, but there's a lot of articles and they're all old. Then the reason why I didn't notice it so much is because of the poor screen in the PlayStation. I mean, it wasn't...
I don't know, maybe it's how heavy they use it. I don't know. We'll look into that. We'll bring it up next episode, because I think that's an interesting question. Because again, like I just said, my understanding of the PSVR 1, and then as we moved into like PC VR, in that I've never actually kind of gone back and looked at really what was happening with the PSVR 1 through my new knowledge of VR tech. So
this is true. Yeah, I didn't really give a shit about this stuff at the time. I was just games.
But there is definitely, like, you can even see it on PSVR 2 games that I'm going to guess it depends on how heavily they're using reprojection, and whether it's, and I guess the game too. Like, for example, like GT7's using reprojection. But unless a car kind of like literally drives fairly like slowish right across you or around you, you really can't see any of the ghosting or issues coming from reprojection. It's the game is, and I know that sadly it's Bradley was going into a tech deep dive of like kind of why reprojection works much better when everything's moving forward and you can't really see it. So that's kind of how they're doing it. But if you want to like two games that are pretty similar in the way that you're moving around the world, like Resident Evil 8 definitely isn't like it's not native smooth like 90 or 120. You can tell, like I can feel it when I'm moving around. I could definitely feel that it was just a little not blurry necessarily, but just a little rougher than say something like Saints and Sinners Retribution, what was native. And but then you go into Horizon and Call of the Mountain, and when you're turning, it's really noticeable that they're using heavy reprojection. And I'm going to guess that they're like hitting the bare minimum frame rates on Call of the Mountain and then reprojecting up like heavily. Whereas I don't think they're using it as heavily on Res 8. But then again, there could be some other trickery going on that that Capcom's been using to try to kind of trick you or not have it feel that way. It could be a color palette thing too. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how developers still use reprojection, because there's no way the PS5 is going to get away without reprojection on some of the like really graphic heavy games, without using reprojection and foveated rendering. So it's just gonna be really neat to see how developers start to utilize it in more savvy ways, and just different tricks that you can do. I know, again, sadly, it's Bradley was talking about certain things that they could be looking at doing to kind of alleviate the visual after effects of reprojection. But who knows? I guess it's just gonna it's just it's one of those things where it's like in 3 years from now, let's see how they've managed to work the tech.
Mm-hmm.
It could be some.
They all just give up and just run it at 60 and. Yeah. Can I tell my story? Or should I start off with story time now?
Yeah, it's story time.
All right,
That's how we got to the topic.
So this is how we got the topic. So back when I posted my Propagation Paradise Hotel review, which you should all watch because, well, it's this channel. Basically, a commenter came up here and said, I have it right here. Said, oh boy, can I play as a little girl? These devs are so PC, it's sickening. And what followed was a conversation where basically the dude said that, I mean, his final thing here is basically, where do you say it? I just lost it. Basically, he said, because he plays as a girl in VR, or because the lead character in a VR game is a girl, he won't play that game because it's immersion breaking. And him playing as a girl is immersion breaking. And I laughed at him, and a bunch of people in chat basically told him like you're being a baby. But it got me thinking, like, what breaks immersion for you? I mean, I don't think this guy. I picture this guy like playing Metroid, and then like at the end when Samus takes her helmet off for the first time and realizes it's this girl, he can't even rage quit because he's already beaten the game. So then he just goes and like beats his wife, and it's sad. But I mean, like, to sit there and not play some of the best games in VR, Half-Life Alyx, I guess, will come up. Some other absolute gems where the main character is a woman, and to think like I'm not playing that because I'm a girl. And I mean, I'm not discounting there isn't something to that. I'm not saying it's it doesn't hamper immersion in some way, but the full on break it just got me thinking, like, what really ruins immersion in VR, and what are things that I guess developers can fix, or maybe what they can't. Just issues that just will pop up organically because of game development, and what are can be fixed by adding a smooth turn option to your game, for instance. This is where this came from. So on the topic of playing as a girl in VR, I've played as a girl countless times in VR. I couldn't count, and they have been some of the best games ever, and it's never bothered me that when all of a sudden my voice is a girl talking to somebody else, and all of a sudden I'm not like taken away. I'm playing this role. And I guess a developer came up in this conversation, actually. He said, the reason why the main character is a woman is purely for the sake of the plot. I know this because I worked on the game trailers. The best way to create an interesting experience is to play with contrasts. What could be better than taking a young, feminine, and fragile woman with no experience in weapons and throwing her into a horrible adventure surrounded by violent monsters where she will have to overcome her fears? If the hero were fearless, muscle-bound G.I. Joe, there'd be no stakes, and we would be bored. If you play this game, you'd realize that this woman has a beautiful values such as family, courage, and honor, which should appeal to you. And I agree with that 100%. I mean, most of the women you play as in VR typically end up being strong characters. It doesn't matter if they're women, men, or whatever. And so for me, anyways, it doesn't break immersion for me at all. Myself, like I sit there playing through Half-Life Alyx and think to myself, well, I should be Morgan Freeman or Morgan. I should be Freeman right now. This is ridiculous. What's his name? Freeman? Half-Life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gordon Freeman.
Gordon.
So I mean, just to start off, I guess where do you sit on that specific immersion breaking thing? Does it affect you in VR when you play as a woman in some way? Like I know you don't. I don't turn the game off, but do you ever notice it and think, oh,
yep, it does actually. It does bug me. It never makes me. It doesn't make me angry. I mean, here's the thing. The stank in his comments, it's pretty easy to kind of like make some assumptions about like kind of how he feels about
I just did
about certain things in the way culture is, and I hear someone who's probably pretty resentful and pretty fed up with it, and I can relate to that because I am I am very tired and becoming increasingly sensitive to woke shit in gaming and movies. But mainly but it's not like I have a problem with, like women and people of color in my games and my movies and stuff like that. It's like I embrace that and love that. I just don't like it being done purely for the sake of that.
I agree with that. I totally agree.
And especially if it's at the expense of character and story or like history, like if it's that you were talking about immersion breaking, like in movies, for example, like if it's a period piece and and it was a certain race period, like if you start,
we're talking Tom Cruise Last Samurai here is what we're talking.
I'm talking period. If you start race swapping in like a period piece and stuff, it's like to me it's jarring, at least, especially if it's a movie that's supposed to be accurate. Now, I mean, again, I guess I can empathize with the fact that when it comes to like say the gender stuff in video games, right now we're definitely seeing a period in gaming where like every lead character now, it's like it's the thing to do is to go to like the strong female heroine, like I mean obviously Tomb Raider was almost a trailblazer in some ways, even though she was a Barbie doll. But like nowadays it's almost rare to find like a strong male hero character, and I can just see why.
I don't know about rare. Rare.
It's getting a lot. It's a lot less. Let's just say that then. It's like, for example, when like Days Gone came out on the PSVR, it was it was like a pretty macho white dude, and it was like that's like almost kind of shocking. But anyways, I'm more just kind of laying the groundwork that I can understand that, like, given kind of the landscape that we are currently in Hollywood and video games, I can see some of that initial like fuck this. Now, as far as like how I really feel like when I'm like playing a game, if I have to play, if it's a character where like I'm a woman, I don't know, like it doesn't really necessarily, like when I was playing Alex and I'm a woman, I would say, where it actually necessarily irks me as far as immersion breaking is if I'm taking damage and I'm like, like that it just immediately kind of like, or if I'm like out of breath or running, I'm kind of like, of course, like the little kid in me is like, that sounds like sexy noises. She's like, I'm like, like it's horrible, but it's like, and
no, you're not wrong. Like I said, it doesn't.
Is it immersion? Me. Is it immersion breaking? Yes, I do think it's kind of immersion breaking. Does it bother me? No, not really. I mean, and the other thing is that I guess it just depends. Like, do you want to escape your reality? Like I used to have friends that I played multiplayer with all the time, like flat games. And this one friend, he always played a girl character. And I remember I joked with him one time, and he didn't take it the right way, and I just kind of said like, dude, like, do you need to tell us something? Like, you're always the girl character. Like, is there a fantasy, or is there like a side of your personality that you just need to like live out? and he kind of got pissy about that. But like he just was like, and I don't know, maybe I was a little, I don't know, maybe there was a side to him that he didn't want to talk about. Maybe he did have some gender dysphoria going on, but like he said that anytime he had a chance to play another person, like to make believe, he's like, why would I be a guy? Like to him it was an opportunity. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's another way of looking at it. I mean, again, the little boy in me, I'm just like, oh, I got a nice set of titties. Woo! I know, and it's horrible. I mean, there's a game that was supposed to come out that didn't come out. I don't know if you remember me telling you about it. It was that zombie game. I don't even remember what it was called anymore now. It was a PC game, early access. It was kind of like a zombie wave shooter where you just got drunk and shot zombies.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing I noticed when I jumped in the game is that if you went like this, it had breast physics. I was like, look, 10 out of 10. The VR grid gives this a 10 out of 10.
But they put it in there, right? So I have no problem with you like noticing. Like I have no. And once again, like I think it'd be now. Is it more immersion breaking to have the jiggle, or would it be immersion breaking if it were just there, just no movement, just a body, and that's it?
Oh, agreed. Like, I need the jiggle. So
that's what I'm saying, right? So now
it is more, but it's like,
there's layers to this. There's
immersion and there's maturity. Okay, I will get, if I get the immersion, then then my low maturity has a problem. Like honestly, if they gave me a game where I could just be like slap,
you should
never get anywhere.
You should go on Steam and click the filters off for your searches. There are so many of those games on Steam, like just full on sex games. It's hilarious. If you're bored, like find that filter and like the search filter and turn it off, and just the amount of sex.
I know it's so
hilarious, and they are crazy. Like stuff. What was the one I saw? It was like a dragon in an alley or something like that, and you basically it was a gay thing where basically you had to like have sex with this dragon because he had like a bottom torso of a man, but like a head. It was just that's the game. It was like what is like it's insane what's on there. I mean.
I'm making wyvern eggs. Yeah. But anyways, I just want to see if there's anything else I really wanted to hit on that. I guess it was like when I read his comments to you, I was like, oof. Like I could hear the just like fuck this shit. I'm never gonna not play a game. Now, okay, now if I'm playing Walking Dead Saints and Sinners and I've given an option to play either the male or the female character, just like say like Mass Effect did, for example, and they went. I mean, excuse me, for a game like Mass Effect,
my chick was an absolute badass. I played that game with both sexes.
But to be able to, the fact that BioWare took Mass Effect and allowed you to play as a male or female and did all the voice, like the massive amounts of voice acting that was required across the board. I'm reading the comments there. I'm trying to concentrate. Is pretty impressive. And I guess in Walking Dead did the same thing for the most part. That you could choose who you wanted to be with your voices. And I always choose the guy. And mainly the reason I chose a guy was just because I wanted my hands to match a little more. And again, I also just kind of wanted to like hear the grunts and groans or whatever, just being like.
Yeah,
it was more immersive. Like I mean, but it doesn't strike me as I never got angry over Half-Life Alyx.
No, it's the same as like honestly, it's the same as like if you have the option of a skin color, which you do in Retribution as well, or in Saints and Sinners. If I choose skin color, I typically dial that thing to the whitest it is because I don't know if you can tell by the glowing skin on your guys' screen right now.
You can almost see your organs pumping.
I'm fairly white, so it's not to say like playing as black or brown person is like immersion breaking, but there's just something to be said when you look at your hands in VR and they look more like your hands. So and this is what we're talking about here. So yeah, but it's not immersion. I wouldn't call these immersion breaking. But they definitely, I guess they can hamper immersion in some ways and in some moments, like you said, when you're taking damage and that's totally valid. And this is also why we're part of this whole woke movement. It's the same thing, like playing, at roles reversed, you're a woman and now playing through like Resident Evil 8 and just listen to this dude just sprack off forever and ever. Like, it's, you don't have a choice. Resident Evil 8,
no,
you are only
you're
one
right.
character.
That's a really good point when you flip it, right? Now, I mean, I'd still be I'd be really curious to know what the real breakdown is of male to female playing video games. It was obviously incredibly male dominated, and I think that has like just as gaming has become just really mainstream now. It's definitely just not a bunch of gamer nerds. Um, like, and I mean that totally respectfully because I was that guy since as long as I can remember. But I think that's partly why
So
games were.
according to as of March 2023, according to Statista,
Mhm.
49% of video gamers are women.
And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I can't
Another,
like
same
can't
Statista
back that
again.
up.
Gamer demographic play today. It's not the right thing. Keep talking.
The reason I say I can't agree with that. Oh, you know what I read somewhere is I did read that one of the reasons that those stats are a little skewed is that they include mobile gaming,
Oh, that would totally do it.
right? And there's and women definitely like I
Look,
know
it
my
makes
friends,
sense, man. I
they
mean,
just
last time I played
gravitate.
Call of Duty, I didn't hear half the chat being women. I mean, it's just, and obviously not all women play all games and blah blah blah. Now it's just getting totally off topic, but um, yeah, I agree that 49% does seem a little bit skewed. I mean, that being said, though, I mean, my daughter plays 1,000 games I would never touch. So I think it's just a matter of like,
Well, it could, like I said, as things are changing too, as gaming is becoming more and more mainstream. But like most of the guys that I know, their wives aren't big gamers. Mine is.
mine's not.
I'm super lucky. Most of my friends that have girls, um, play games, but not like the boys do. Um, I don't know. It's just, and I only mention that just because of like I'm just saying like where the market would skew a bit more. But you're absolutely right about how many women have played through like macho guy roles and stuff. Um, I mean, really, when it comes down to it, VR it is different though, and that's why it's a really it's
It's more
different.
personal. It's a more personal gaming experience.
Like I'd love chat to be able to like spout out what they feel or what they think, but like for example, I just played Horizon Forbidden West. I got like 60 hours, beat the crap out of it. Never once did I feel like I was Aloy. Sorry. I never felt like I never felt now that I look back at it. I never had this thought before, but I'm thinking about it. And maybe it's just the VR brain in me now, but I never once felt like I was Aloy.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was controlling her and then watching her cinematic progression and her story and what she was getting into. I never was like, "Oh, you did that to me. I'm making choices." I never felt connected to her in
Did you play
that
the now,
regard.
now we're just on this topic here? But did you ever play you played the new Tomb Raider games?
Yep.
How connected were you to Laura Croft in those ones? Like every time she
Never.
died, never. Okay, I was just curious.
No. No, I'm just saying and maybe it's a third. It's probably
Oh,
a
probably
third.
for sure. Yeah.
It is a third person thing. That's kind of the disconnect for me. It's not. I'm not opposed to third person games, but I do feel that maybe there's a disconnect there. But getting back to the VR side of it, I definitely feel more like it's hard not to kind of be like me talking
Yeah.
to you. It's why I'm really excited for the AI progression that we're going to see in video
It's
games and
like
the interactivity of people.
on Quest, like my avatar looks like me, and your avatar looks like a trans version of you. No, nothing. You recall that there? You recall that your big giant wig and stuff? So funny.
Um,
I do
so
want to move off of this pretty
I
soon,
was
but
going to say, moving off of the gender thing though, I'd love. I'm just saying this right now for you guys in chat. Like, fire off. I'm also making notes, around things that break your immersion.
well, Savage said one here that I wanted to bring up, and it just came across it in Creed recently, where I brought up to you. Everyone in Creed, when they talk to you, they're Mels Mouth. Everybody talks to you, they're Mels Mouth, except the ring announcer who introduces the fighters. The only character in this game who doesn't move his mouth, arguably one of the more important characters who should be moving his mouth. He welcomed me. He's like, ladies and gentlemen. And he's just like, well, his voice talks. You're like, what is like you did voice work for everybody else in the entire game. You mapped out the mouse for everybody else in the game and not the ring announcer. And it's just like, what is happening? Like, why would you just stop there? Like, did you lose the facial mapping guy in development and just couldn't replace him? It's weird. Doesn't make any sense. It's a good one, Savage. I like that one.
Oh, did he actually mention that specifically? That
Yeah, he
game?
mentioned that. No, he just mentioned a big immersion breaker for me was the NPCs mouths don't move, which is totally true, especially in VR. When you look at somebody, they're
You know what bugs me more than Mel's not moving? Mel's moving wrong.
that's
I
true. That
almost,
one's
I would almost rather them sit there and move their and just bounce their heads like I'm watching like an episode of what you call it? Oh my gosh, I have it Fire Thunderbirds, with
oh
the
god,
puppets. I love it. I
gross.
got that whole series, man. I love that show.
Shut up.
I
That's
really do.
awful. That was the worst.
So good,
So
so good.
bad.
Oh
You're
my god, it's
idiots.
amazing. It's so good. Um, and I'm not going to go down that road because I was told last episode that I don't stay on topic. But yeah, NPC, just especially in VR. In VR, I think it's huge, especially when you run into a game that's got that AAA quality of the NPCs. Like I think of certain games that jump to mind. Like just PlayStation games for some reason would be like
I know it's been so long now. I'm drawing
No, I'm
blanks.
just thinking. I'm trying to think games that jump out at me. I'll just across the board would be something like Blood and Truth. Had really good. Also, Red Matter 2. That chick was mind blowing to me. Lone Echo. I would say Lone Echo actually gives many Hollywood movies a run for their money. With
The Inpatient had decent one. The Inpatient was good. The game itself, not so much.
is
But
okay, but Lone Echo was some next level shit. And Red Matter made me think of Lone Echo. Farpoint had some really good animations in there, but I'm just saying that like when I'm head to head, nose to nose with an NPC that looks like really has like the facial movements and I can see pores and like their eyes, especially it's all about same with CG, it's all about the eyes. And the eyes on the girl in Red Matter where I was like, Jesus Christ, that looks amazing.
well,
Like they
she
don't look
she
dead. They don't look
follows
dead.
you like it's
Oh, does
wild.
she? I mean,
The
I've
eyes
only got.
follow you.
Oh yeah. When you move like this,
Yeah.
and that's what someone was getting at there, is that I feel like with eye tracking and face tracking, and then the jumps that are going to come with AI. We've talked about this in an old episode, but it was Alana Pierce from IGN fame that was saying that she's like I can't tell you guys, I got all these NDAs, but I talked to a lot of developers, like big AAA developers, and she's like, and I can tell you that in the next generation of gaming, and she was talking about stuff coming out on Unreal Engine 5 and like into the next few years of PS5 and such. She's like, it's not going to be graphics where you're going to see the massive improvements. We've hit a bit of a ceiling, a glass ceiling in some ways. I mean, Unreal Engine's changing that a bit, but she's like, it's going to be an AI. It's the way that NPCs are going to remember you. They're going to talk to you. It's the way the world's going to change around you. She's like, it's going to blow your mind because that's where all the time and resources are going into. And in a world now where a developer could just cheat and put in Chat GPT probably to they're like using Ubisoft is using Chat GPT now to do a bunch like all the dialogue for their NPCs, like the random
Hmm.
dialogue in open worlds. And so it's just I'm just saying like NPCs as they start to come along and even just now in VR, because we can get right up in their personal space, like Lone Echo was almost creepy. Like you're kind of sometimes you'd be floating and you'd put your hands like up on her chest and you're like, I am really sorry. Like I
Well,
actually felt like
she would but she would
yeah,
shake you off. She'd be
and she'd give
stop.
you a dirty
Yeah,
look.
totally. It was
And
awesome.
like if you shone your flashlight in her face, she'd go like this and stuff. And it was like I felt like I invaded her personal space. I'm like, you just made me feel dirty. And I bought this game. I bought you. That doesn't sound wrong at all.
Another thing that actually drives me nuts is when your hands can just pass through anything. Like I would,
Agreed.
I
Yep,
can't
yep.
stand when your hand just disappears and like whether it's a desk or a cup or a wall or a door. Like just make it stop. Just make that barrier. It's like
Especially for me, I agree 100%. On that note, I also can't stand it when if you've when your things you're holding don't, like if I've got two blades in my hands and they don't clank, like immediately, and I just brush through it. I immediately like, oh well, you
Yeah.
failed on that. Like and I almost always do that, like clang clang clang. Um, Also irritating if the sound's delayed. You're like, clang. Um, that's irritating to me. But you know what? Where I really notice the like hit detection is what we're talking about here with geometry is shooting games. Like for example, I think of like Firewall was one of the first games that I really ran into this where you needed to tuck your gun in. And so for the first time ever in my life, like close quarters combat, like in a shooter, like taking a gun that had a shorter barrel on the end of it, you started to realize why guns like the P90 or the MP5 and like why soldiers would opt for some of those depending on what they were doing. Because if you're going through buildings and you're breaching through like doorways and stuff, you like the fact that you like you got this big gun that you got to bring up. Otherwise, you're like clang. I'm stuck on. And so the fact that you could bring a short gun and just kind of cruise through doors, like that is so VR. Like it was like it made you start to act like a real soldier too, because you started bringing your gun up and tucking it in or dropping it down, and like Triangulator just said like that the again hit detection. He was talking about like sniper rifles and on railings and stuff. Playing Onward did an amazing job of the fact that like if you wanted to. Okay, I mean I've told this story before, but I'll say it again. I was playing Onward, and this was one of the first times you remember this story, right? And one of the first times I had played
I've heard it
ever.
12 dozen times, so
I'm
yes.
saying it again, but it was one. But I mean, we're talking about immersion,
I
and it
know, I
was
know.
probably one of the most immersed moments I ever had in my life. And I'd never played like that kind of like realistic room scale like shooter, basically. And you get the sniper rifle, and I've got my ammo on my belt, and I'm like, okay, I'm setting up camp here on this ledge out in the desert, and I kind of had to lay down. I was like, okay, put out the tripod or the bipod rather, click that out, and yeah, just like Triangulator was saying, like it's like boom, it's like Kate, gotta rest that, and then the gun started to pivot on it. I'm like, sweet, Kate, get up there, bang, take a shot at this group of guys, miss because I suck, and they start coming at me. I'm like, okay, I got this. Okay, bang. I think I winged another guy, but they're coming at me fast now, and they're starting to shoot at me up the hill. I'm like, fuck me. And I think I fired off a couple more shots, ran out of ammo. I'm like, fuck. Fuck. So I eject the clip. I'm like, my ammo. Oh my God, my ammo's on my front. I'm like rolling over on my back, trying to get the ammo because I was laying on top of it. I finally got a new clip in the gun, and they're on me. I'm like, fuck me. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. So I jump up, launch myself off the ground. Hadn't realized that I had like crawled and shimmied underneath my actual computer desk to get into my sniper position. And when I jumped up, I lifted the entire desk up with me, monitor and everything. That was almost a bad day. But I mean, talk about immersion. Like I had completely lost any awareness of where I was in
Hmm.
like anything other than that world. And I mean, that's immersion.
Yeah,
And
it
and
reminds me
and
of
all and all of those things that we were talking about, including what Triangulator was saying, was what was leading to that like loss of reality, I guess.
and that reminds me of Pavlov and the fact you can't rest your big giant sniper rifles on the environment. And that was immersion breaking for me as well. We were playing that bridge level. That was this big, huge, massive sniper rifle. It's got the bipod on there, and I went to go rest it because I just assumed, and right, I was like, what? No, you can't? No, aw. So that was unfortunate. Um,
But Demonic just brought up an interesting point. He said, "Notice he's talking like he was really there," and
yeah,
that's the interesting thing. And again, you guys let me know in chat because I don't know if I'm the only one, and I don't even remember your answer, Ryan. But like, are your memories of a VR game different than a flat game? Because they are for me. Because when I
yeah,
think
because I
of
was there.
that's what I'm saying. Like when I think of playing a flat game, I think of myself on the couch playing the game. Like, and I think more of like how I was feeling playing the game or what I was eating or just or whatever. I mean, I think about the game obviously in detail, but when I think about playing a VR game, I often think about like my memories of being in a place. And that's very neat. That's very neat.
100%. I mean, like I said, we've talked before earlier. Now we'll just rehash stories, but Detached is one we both love. For the fact that like putting that thing on full simulation mode and having that zero G physics, I was just sitting in my chair, man, and I could not have been any more like I was just laughing at the fact that I was in zero G. It felt like I was in zero G. I had like a full body. I could see my. It was nuts. Um, even shit,
do you know what detached? What did it for me? I mean, obviously the completely unrestricted zero G, but what sold that to me, like the experience would have been so much less, is the fact that you were in the helmet and they had it and your head was not locked inside the helmet. Like the fact that like you could kind of do this and it was like you were really moving a head inside a closed helmet. And you could look down and you could see like the collar of the helmet, and so you felt like you were in a spacesuit. And because the shield of it had that depth, like you could see the glass almost, that really sold me on that. Like I was like, oh my god, like I'm in a spacesuit and I'm
yeah,
doing this thing. And I remember you could turn that off. I was like, why would you do that?
yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Even having a body in VR, like I always appreciate when I'm given a body in VR, even if it's just a torso. I mean, the more of a body I'm given in VR, even if it's janky, even if you can see the legs walking all funny, like I get why I get why Meta didn't put legs in their stupid Horizon app, but like when it's just floating hands, I'm disappointed because floating hands to me is like it's like practically the laziest thing you can do in VR because I've seen games do forearms, and in your vision like that forearm like that can be a lot of what you see of your arm. Like it might cut off at the elbow, but
Which is what Res did, Res 8, and I don't know how I feel about it.
yeah,
I
but
was
then
going to say to you, I think that in this chat, I would think a lot of people, it would probably be the most divisive, divisive, the most divisive thing. It would be hands or full body. And then you and I have talked about this, and my answer to that is actually normally hands because so few developers do full bodies right.
I get that, but like I said, but hands is one thing, but hands and forearms, I think for like it's still pretty easy to do that. Even having full arms is still pretty doable. And I remember what Immortal Legacy there, they gave you the full arms and they fixed it. But yeah, they were both like coming right out of your neck.
That was horrible.
And they fixed it. They fixed it in a patch. And it was substantially better. Even like Doom VFR there, they gave you that when you're playing with the aim controller, they just lock that third arm to your headset, or your second arm to your headset.
Yeah,
so if you looked around and like once you saw it, like if you ever get a chance to play like Doom VFR with the aim or a dual sense, I guess. But once you notice it and you realize that that your arm is stuck to your head, well now it's a baby hand. Like it's actually like a tiny baby hand that's mapped to your headset, and not a full sized arm because it just doesn't make sense. Because why is this arm mapped to my head? It just doesn't. The arm doesn't connect to my head like that. It's awesome if you go back and play that.
Oddly enough, that never really bothered me as much as it did some people, and it probably should have bothered me more. My go-to example, and we've talked about this before, I think, when it comes to the whole hands versus full body thing, the perfect example would be Contractors. Contractors allows you to do full body, like I mean 100% head to toe, feet, armor, hands, arms, everything. Or you can just go hands. And even though they do a fairly good job, I think of the body, I still feel like I don't know the way if you really get moving and you're twisting and you're turning and if you're at awkward angles and you're trying to grab things on the body, I just feel like it just feels a bit messy. And I feel the same way with what you call it, No Man's Sky. Even though you're not grabbing at the body, for some reason I feel that like just going with the hands feels cleaner, and I
Oh,
feel
I get that.
lighter. It feels less janky. Again, it's not so much that it's not a body versus hands. It's how they do it or what the game is. I guess certain games were great at the full body. And weirdly, the game that always comes to mind to me is that Spiral Horus Station. They did amazing, just the way that even the rubber suit like flexed.
Yeah, yeah,
Red Matter 2 does good full body actually.
yeah.
Speaking of full body.
You said the arms flexing, and I immediately thought of once again of
I think of Impatient.
Impatient, where
Yeah.
you stretch your arms out, and I have long arms, so that whole game I was Mr. Fantastic, and that was immersion breaking. It's so dumb. I don't know why they had that in there. Like, we'll just stretch your arms up for like your arms. Like, I have long arms, and my arms are like even longer in VR. It looked ridiculous. And that was immersion breaking. So I definitely see your point in regards to like body being. I forgive some body jank because I understand why it's there. Like, there's just a lot of collision detection you have to deal with on something that people aren't looking at 90% of the time. So I do understand like why they ignore it in some ways. But then, like, something like that, it's just like criminally.
So the question becomes, though, we're talking about full bodies and hands, and we're talking about it for your immersion level. Now we go multiplayer, and now that really depends on how the game does it, because very few VR games do it where your buddy with full body isn't like doing some like crazy ass like weird like sidestepping knee breaking like jig while he's trying to run around with you. One of them was like recently was Survival Nation. I was like, what? It's like it was like only his knees moved, so he's like and he'd be like, I'm coming.
Yeah, it just reminds me of like Arizona Sunshine, even like Farpoint.
That was brutal. Arizona Sunshine, your legs could be on the next level.
Well, the feet were always stuck to the ground, so they would like the feet never left the ground. So they would just like this. It was like this weird dragging thing, is like drag themselves around the map. It just looks so weird. Creed's another example of that too, and they made it a bit better in the new one. But remember the original Creed, when the first release, it was the same thing where your feet just kind of like dragged along the ground as well. It looked
Creed was brutal. It was
it looked so bad.
Like, I can't even box you. Like, I'm like, I can't take this seriously.
Well, when you mentioned the eyes, Creed also had when it had the dead eyes, they were just black, soulless eyes. Yeah, it was the creepiest thing ever. But you couldn't help but stare at them. It was just like hypnotizing to see how you screw this up. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Now, one of the things that that Jason P mentioned, and I mean he's dead on. I mean, I feel like there's two big conversations around immersion in VR, and it's like one is the hands versus full body, and the other one is in-game like physics with like weapons, like physical weapons, like melee combat is the big, and also guns. It's like, do you do the weighted approach, which is like the most extreme would probably be Saints and Sinners, either title, or just like pretty much like most other games, which is where the games have the guns and the knives have no weight.
Yeah.
I every day will take Saints and Sinners approach. I still would tweak certain things. Like, I don't like how if your blade gets stuck, say, in a zombie, as it should, because say it's a blade that doesn't have a high rating of sharpness, so it doesn't come out easily. But like, you can just start like walking down the street, and all of a sudden your hand will like even though it's like 10 feet away from you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be more realistic if you couldn't move, if they held you. You were stuck in that body, and you actually had to pull your arm out like this. But I mean, it's always a struggle with VR of like how much can they hold your hand back in the game and not have you feel like it's like a latency disconnect.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like Saints and Sinners, the guns sometimes feel a little awkward because of the weight. Like, if you like the rifle with the single action bolt reload, sometimes it's like if you take your left hand off, the gun just drops.
It's like your arm is like jello now. It's like that weight makes it a bit weird.
And it's like, I'm like, I guess in real life it really would be like you'd want to like lean it over your hand, but it's not as easy. It's not like you can put it under your chin and rest it on your arm and then do this. You don't have. There's no perfect way of doing it, I think, but I definitely like that approach better than like a waggle fest. Like, melee combat is the biggest struggle in VR, especially if it's skill based. I think that's why your review of Broken Edge was so divisive with some people, because you and I just didn't get it. But
for which one?
Broken Edge. Remember that game? That sword combat game. Wasn't that what it was called?
I don't
remember. Remember the one done by the Fallen Leaves developer?
Oh, yeah, Broken Edge. You're right. You're right. Sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot about that game.
And you and I didn't really like it
No,
that much. We didn't get it. We thought it was boring. But there were some people out there who
they love that fucking
they
game.
really got what they were trying to do. And I think that you and I just weren't like the fencing guys to just not understand like what they were trying to like some of the ideologies they were trying to replicate, I guess, in that. But anyways, I don't know, it's that is the argument of the weighted versus waggle fest, and I'll take weighted any day. Um, I I haven't seen anyone do it better yet. Not that I can really think of. I mean, I guess Blade and Sorcery has weighted weapons.
Yeah, I mean, even Gorn, as comical as Gorn is, they do it fairly well. Like it's so physics based, it's kind of ridiculous, but it counts. I mean, when I smash a guy with a club, it does feel like I'm smashing. Like there are games out there that do that. Even as poor and awful as it was, there's that stupid, was it Rage Room? It's awful game. You should never ever play, even if it's free. But they did try hard to get like the physics of like the melee physics and stuff down. It's just the game was just so atrocious it didn't matter. So like, there are games out there that do it and try. Swordsman, I mean, Swordsman's come a long way in regards to that, and they're still working on it and everything else. But yeah, I agree with you. Like especially now, like it's like once you've seen proper melee in VR, it's really hard to go back to just swinging your sword and just hoping strikes land. It's just not the same as like hitting someone in the leg and actually seeing their leg get impaled, and like it's when it comes to melee combat, that visceralness matters. Like it just
I
matters,
really
man.
agree. I agree. And haptics can do a lot to try to I guess make that connection point as well. And that's probably one thing that when we're talking about like I mean a lot we're focusing a lot on like core aspects of VR about what breaks our immersion. So I don't want to go too far into like the haptic side because obviously you can get crazy with that and maybe we can talk about that in a bit. But before we get into that, just talking more about like things that just break.
Click turning only. Like it's even once
Yeah,
again propagation Paradise Hotel, same thing where they had an option for smooth turning, but it was still click turning only. Only with smooth animation or no animation, where it's just you just turn 45 degrees in an instant, and you can watch my review. Like the footage looks actually pretty abysmal because you can see on constantly like shift. And I play seated. I don't play spinning around in a chair. I don't like standing for hours on end, so that's why I play. And man, it's crazy that 2023 we're now 7 years into this 7 years into this, and these developers are still making the same mistakes as they were
I was
7
gonna
years
say the
ago.
same thing. Yeah,
It's
it's like they don't pay attention.
it's insane. And then I haven't heard recent stories. Like I would love to ask them why they chose that method, but I guarantee it's the same thing. Well, we tried it in studio and found that some of us got sick playing it, and blah, blah. It's the same. It's the same thing, same excuses we've heard for the last X number of years. It's just put the option in your put the most immersive options in your game and the least immersive options you can in your game. Just do it. And then let the users decide what they want to do. But like the second you limit anything, it kills it, It like even having to turn in the real world. That can kill a game for me because if I'm playing seated and I have to turn the real world and now I'm turning with my feet, like that's not immersive. I'd rather use a thumbstick. So at least it's natural. Like turning is a natural motion, and screwing my feet along the ground to turn, that's not a natural motion. So it's this trickery of thinking that like doing everything in the real world translates perfectly to VR when it doesn't, and that's also a huge mistake developers make as well.
I agree with that. Yep. Like when I look at the walking treadmills, I haven't tried one yet, and I have no interest to. Like I look at that, I'm like, that is like
Insane.
half like doing a Michael Jackson moonwalker lean while you're like go boom, 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 and your feet kind of like clank and slide over a plastic thing, um, and you kind of like try to like basically just like not fall with like a belt attached to your waist,
Yeah,
like
full harness and everything else.
like
It's like
and the,
immersion.
and the whole reason you're doing this is so that you get to go like this with your like legs. Like I had cyber shoes. I mean, you guys go. There's a video in there where I was playing in a contractors tournament with them, and like you sit and you do this, okay, but like it wasn't fun. Like I didn't feel. Did I feel more immersed? Yes, actually, I would. And I'll say that what made me feel more immersed was that I was getting tired because I was physically exerting myself, and it started to play a role in how I was playing the matches. Because I would be like, "Oh fuck, there's a guy way over there." Oh, yeah, I don't really want to run after him though. Like my laziness started kicked in. I was like, I could probably just hang out here
But
and rest.
there's something to that. I mean, the whole point of game, not the whole point, but a large factor of games, especially modern day games, is to keep you playing that game for as long as possible. Via however they do it, with in-game transactions or in-game currencies or just so whatever way makes it addictive to keep you in the headset. That's kind of how these games should be designed. And like I said, a treadmill, like motion. Like I play physical games. I haven't done it in a while. I'm gonna get back into it. But as far as like the workout games, like playing Creed or Knockout League, like you play that for half an hour, man, and you play that properly, like you're just sitting there just like you're just heaving. And it's as a boxing game, it feels great. But like if I was playing Crossfire, I guess is a future example, and I had to sit there and run on the spot, like that was one like in order to move in VR, let's say you had to run on the spot. The next game, you had to sit there and just run on the spot to like what?
There's a physical game I did in. I'm not trying to promote videos here constantly, but I'm just as reference, guys. I did a I'm getting fat video, and it was like and I was going through all these physical games, and I was gonna like build a workout around it. And there was a game that I picked up off of App Lab where you ran in spot, and it used the bouncing of the gyros to like bring you into.
I played an old Google Cardboard game, horror game that did the exact same thing, and it was actually hilariously good. It actually worked.
Oh yeah,
really
this
well.
was actually it was actually kind of a trip. So I mean that's just not more immersive to me, and like I don't like I'm like I don't that doesn't really do anything for me at all. But the chat's kind of running wild now since you started to get into turning and frame rate, and I like as VR veterans, I know you and I, like, I can't stand it. If a game's click turning only, man, I'm fucking done. Like, I mean, now we're not in the PSVR 1 days where we have to face
Dude,
forward.
teleportation and node-based movement, it's all.
I mean,
really...
most games these days, very few games are only teleportation unless it's like part of their game design, like a job simulator or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, and so most of them, I think most developers have gotten, like they do put in full locomotion. That's not as much of an issue anymore. But like, and most have smooth turning in there. But there's still those guys like, oh, really? We'll patch it in. Like, oh, we, like you said, they're like, oh, in house, we didn't like it. Or there's a lot of developers I've talked to who can't play their game full locomotion or smooth turning.
Mm-hmm.
They actually can't play their game that way. They've only ever played it, and they're like one of the main testers. And so they're like, not even like, it's like, no, you don't get to put a game out then, like, or you have to have someone come in and do that testing for you, because you're missing. That's irresponsible of you to not have like those people covered. Where I'm agreeing with chat though is that my biggest problem now is not so much that there's no smooth turning or no full locomotion. It's that I don't get to run fast enough. And that's so I feel like I'm running through water.
Yeah.
Or because what I'm almost bulletproof for VR sickness. But what will get me feeling woozy is if the smooth turning is too slow. And I'm like, it's like, I don't do this in real life.
Yeah.
Like, I don't turn like this. In fact, if anyone saw you on the street and you were like, I'm coming, don't worry about it. And I'm constantly turning up dials and maxing out, going, really? That's as fast as you're giving me? I'm like, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's brutal. Like, I'd rather
I 100% agree with that, man. Like, I mean, like I said, especially like horror games. I find horror games are actually worse for that than other games where you're turning at, you could, they'll give you the option of snap turning, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees. So in one press of a thumbstick, quadoom, you're damn near turned around. Put on smooth turning and you're like, yeah, same thing. You're just this tank. And like, I understand, like, well, as a gaming element, you kind of want that there, but like, once again, VR is a different animal, and it reminds me of, like, you know what, turning that slow in Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 worked pretty good. Let's just put that in VR. And that's not the way, like, we've moved on. Like, now that I'm in there, I would be, turn and run and just go. And yeah, turning too slow is ridiculous. It was funny. I was gonna, and turning too fast would also be that, but typically that's always optional. I've never had a game where you turn too fast by default that I can recall. But yeah, slow movement in general is an absolute killer, for sure. You're reading chat.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading chat. It's very
I'm gonna
interesting.
get back to no. I've been glancing over here.
Yeah. I mean, it's just funny to me that I think that sometimes developers don't understand that can't speak, slower movement, especially in turning, is more vomit-inducing than letting us buck.
Right.
Like Sirento, someone mentioned. Like Sirento, nothing. Sirento never. Didn't even move the needle for me. I was just like,
yeah, doing those flips and shit. I loved it.
Nothing bothered me with that game, and I know that's not for everybody, but I don't care about them. Like, it's fact, like it's like, I think developers underestimate how many VR players, veterans, like they got into VR to get their shit stirred. Like we got into this, like, let it buck, baby, faster, harder, quicker. Like, nobody complained about like Wipeout. It's like, it's a little fast.
Some people complain about it.
I don't care about those people.
I agree. It's not for you. I totally agree.
It's just, and I mean, we could do an entire episode around what crazy things developers have done to try to give people like comfort options, like whether it be weird grids around them, or somebody mentioned like the pump your arms to move. I want to know if there's any research that actually helps, because that just makes me feel like an idiot.
Well, it's been, grids popping up. I mean, that's also been an issue too. Less and less now, thank God. But I mean, less of an issue now, I guess. I'm trying to think the last game that had that grid pop up that was ridiculous. It was that cone that came over top of you. It was a late PSVR 1 game. They fixed it, but it was absolutely the second you turned your head, it would pop up every time. Brian was bitching about it. That's going to bother me. Less and less and less, though, I guess, as far as that goes.
What did he complain about?
Just like when those in-game grids that some games have, where if you
some of them are aggressive, some of
them
they're
insane.
What was one of the ones so Hitman had one?
It was Hitman. It was Hitman. That was the one.
Hitman was brutal.
They fixed it. They did fix it.
Every game I can think of that had the aggressive border or the grid or whatever was a PSVR game. Funny enough.
Yeah, I agree. That too.
And I'm gonna guess that was a tracking thing. They were really trying to keep you in like the sweet spot or something.
What about height in VR?
That's a big thing. Well, I mean, let me reference something directly about that because it was in my review for Walkabout. Walkabout does an amazing job of having the club adjust height to whatever you are. So if you're a kid, if you're sitting, if you're a giant, it doesn't matter. The club will automatically adjust, and it does it in a really sweet way that doesn't feel like it's like a go-go gadget club. It just kind of does it like it just kind of, you bring it to the ground, it just goes, and it does a really nice job of that. But then something that Jason mentioned, the Livinator, and he has to play seated, and he said that a big problem that PlayStation has, and we talked about this in accessibility, is they don't have a height adjustment option in the primary settings of the PSVR 2, which is a massive oversight on Sony's part. And it sucks for him because he can play Walkabout mini golf no problem, but he's a midget on the PSVR 2. Like, it doesn't height adjust him. He can't say, raise me. Right. And it's the only system that doesn't have its own height adjustment built into its hardware. Software, I guess, technically. Like, so that's a thing. I mean, that's almost an accessibility thing. I can't, like, I mean, you know how I felt about the fact that Pavlov made me stand. That just pissed me off.
Same.
Are you talking more about like
just height? Real height. I was thinking of height in game, and this, I guess, in a way, it kind of comes back to the whole gender thing that started this. But I remember, like, I'm not short. I'm 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in that ballpark. So I'm like taller than a lot of people around me. So like I'm used to looking like at like eye contact is typically here or lower. It's not usually looking up higher. So in games where like if the height's off where I am, like looking at somebody and I'm not playing a short person, nothing like that, that to me is a killer because it does feel absolutely bizarre for me to be looking up to talk to somebody. And it happened in propagation. You are playing as a girl, so I'm not. You are, I guess, being more in that role, but it definitely throws me off. As far as immersion goes, it definitely throws me off.
So Shades of Gray Matter, PSVR 2, you can mess with the floor height, so you can kind of hack it hack it that way. But then messing with your floor height can also just cause issues, depending on what the game is and if you're picking stuff off the ground or whatever. But back to the height thing. So I'm not a super tall guy. I'm 5'8" on a good day, and so I'm basically Tom Cruise height.
Wearing your Timberlands?
He ain't tall. Yeah, I can't spike my hair like you to get those few extra inches. But anyways, me. This is kind of like it's funny that I'm admitting this. Is that every time I play a game where it asks you to, where it calibrates your height and then asks you if it's right or whatever, or you put in your height, I always bump it up just a little bit, not a lot, just like 5'9", 5'9.5". Just like, hey, fuck you, it's my reality. Damn you.
All right,
I feel bigger.
Yeah, now you are Tom Cruise. You're like next Schwarzenegger. Or not Stallone, sorry. He's like 5'9".
Yeah, he's not a tall guy either.
He's short,
you mentioned that. Yeah. But that's just I just like I feel so short. I don't like looking up at NPCs like I do in real life. And I guess that's just a thing. Wasn't it you and I were playing? What game were we playing? I feel like it was like, what the hell was that game? The sword game.
Swords of Gargantua?
Weren't one of us like mini?
Yeah. I think we were mini to each other, weren't we? Were we both low? I can't remember. You probably find that somewhere. But yeah, we were like super short. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird, especially when what's weird about that too is when like you're not like I look like if we're at eye level, but like for some reason I'm shorter and you're sitting there poking at my face, but it's just like poking at my stomach. Like it's some weird disconnects, I guess, in regards to like some of these VR games. But that one's a lot more minor, I guess.
Jason P, you're definitely short if you're including half inch. I need a little more. I don't want to break immersion now. I don't want to be like 6'5". But another thing that somebody brought up, in addition to like frame rate, this was early on. It was how some games will Res 8 was guilty of that, but breaking into 2D cutscenes.
Oof.
And that can be quite jarring. But you know what? It's interesting because so like Res 7, everything was 2D. It was just a less robust port or whatever. Maybe it couldn't handle it. I don't know. With all the stuff that was happening, or it was just an afterthought. But regardless of the reason, RE8, like 90% of its cutscenes were in full VR, full 3D, and it could be quite. It was very immersive, but it could also be quite immersion breaking, for two reasons. One, you could still move around, like you could still turn. So
which game, sorry?
RE8. So you could rip your head like right off your body basically and see your torso like doing the animations. And like that is one of I'll throw that into the mix of one of the more immersion breaking things in VR for me is anytime they take control of your body or your arms. And that's why I have complained so hard on Twitter about the next Firewall going for auto reloads. Now you've heard right that they're going to add in an elite option where players can play without eye tracked auto aiming and it's manual reloads. And I think they're going to be surprised how many players choose to play that.
Mm-hmm.
But the main version of the game, the default is going to be auto reloads and slightly auto-tracked eye aiming. And like I don't think that's going to work for them as well as they think it does, because anytime in VR, especially once you've gotten used to two hands in the game, you can do some things two-handed and they take control of an arm, it's just like I'm playing a video game.
I see that for gaming, I see that for reloading, but as far as like VR cutscenes go, I can totally excuse that because you're still trying to tell a story. So I agree with that to a point. Like I said, reloading for sure. I can totally see where it's immersion breaking. Especially if especially if reloading. Like, why can't I manual reload? But like I said, for cutscenes, and we'll go back to Resident Evil 8, I guess, when because most of their cutscenes are in VR, and you lose
Until the
total.
end.
Right,
It's weird. It's like they ran out of money at the end. I know
right.
you haven't played the game, but you like get to the last like couple hours of the game, especially
I played a
I
little
can't
bit, a little
I
bit.
can't I know you did, but you don't see it until like it's literally there's the odd cutscene in the game, but then when you get to the last 2 hours, and I can't really tell you guys what's happening there, but it's like all it's just like they ran out of budget. Like, yeah, we got no more money for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely weird, especially because like spent the whole game doing it. But like I said, for like to tell a story, I totally understand where loss of body, I guess, is necessary because you are still you can't be in full control if they're trying to tell you a narrative tale. It just whether unless they cut to like a third person cutscene where they just remove you from the action entirely.
I think they should. I think that's the way to. I
I,
think that's kind go 3D. Go 3D. Put you in the room in a static position, so you can like see it going on. Now that being said, like man, when RE8 when like some of the scenes like the full cinematics were the best like amazing moments in the game. Like I don't mean to sound misogynistic, but when you get like yanked up by the main, I can't remember her name now, Delamanitris or whatever her name is, and you're looking down at her massive chest.
Lady Demetrescu or something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like that. Yeah, yeah, her. It's like you're just like, holy Jesus. Like I'm just like you're really like, like she was so sexualized in the earlier promotions and stuff, and you're like she's you're just in the scene with her and you're just like, holy crap, you are a massive woman. Like things like that. And then there's the parts where they like, throw you down tunnels and you're just like flying down these like caves. And it's awesome. Like I don't want to, I wouldn't want to miss that. I'm just saying the fact that they let you kind of turn your body was probably not a good idea. Like they kind of gave you more control than they probably should have. And that was a, um, I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't know. It's just like I said. I think back to Larcenauts, and they ate a ton of shit over the fact that you'd be like running with your character, and then like your all your arms would start doing like a reload sequence,
Hmm.
and people are like, "Oh my god!" Like, and like a lot of people are like, "I can't play it. Like, let me auto reload because you're taking control of this whole animation sequence." Um, and I think a lot of people with like say Firewall are like, no, like I know there's quite a few people who are still like, no, I like the auto reload. Like I don't want to have to worry about that. And and if I suck at reloading or I can't get it in properly, like that's immersion breaking. Like if I don't I want to feel like a badass Navy SEAL. And if I like suck like I do in real life, then that's immersion breaking. But I think people are gonna find it more jarring than they think because they're not on an aim controller anymore where it was like, okay, this hand. It was like, no,
Yeah.
it's the whole your hands. Like you're gonna do stuff with two hands, and all of a sudden they're gonna lock you in for a reload sequence. I don't know. That's immersion breaking for me because it's like either do it or don't do it.
Shay just brought this up too. He said, "How would you guys feel about games doing cutscenes where it's a virtual screen but it has 3D depth?" And
Well, that's
we
what I
just
would say.
Vertigo,
Yeah.
which Vertigo Two was we just played that and had exactly what you're talking about, where it was basically looking at a 3D movie. Even going back as far as Everest VR did the same thing, where they basically just rendered what you're looking at in 3D, but just put it in frame. I love it. That's an excellent way to get around things and still let you utilize VR because you just have that 3D depth. It's awesome. It works awesome in Vertigo 2. And I've seen it in a few other games as well. I can't recall any more off the top of my head. I guess Vertigo 1 more than likely. But it's great. It's totally awesome.
Now I will say somebody mentioned something there. That's not really what they were saying, but if a developer, whether it be a first party or someone else, was like looking at doing a hybrid VR game, and the thing that was holding them up was what to do with all the cinematics, then my answer to that would be like, I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, I'm not a big story guy either. Like I'm just saying, if it was a game and they were just like, well, I just don't know if we're gonna like like say God of War, and they're like, we were gonna bring it to VR, but we just didn't know what to do with all the cutscenes because there's a lot of cinematics in it. And I'm like, you know what? If we got the choice and said like, guys, do you mind 2D cutscenes? I'd be like, but we'll give you everything else in VR, whether that be from a third person or a first person, whatever they
Mhm.
chose to do. Yeah, bring it. I don't care. Like, I don't care that much. I would say at the minimum, the way I would do it, and I think Savage Gamer brought this up, and so my hat's off to him for the deep cut was and I'm just gonna ruin it now because I can't think of what it was called now. It was the bear game. It was like the 2D. It was
the Lost Bear.
Lost Bear. Thank you. That is how they could do it. If like they just like make a little auditorium or something where the cutscenes go to, where there's like you've got a little bit of perspective around you that you're in some kind of a theater or something, and then have it playing out.
Yeah, Castle Storm did the same thing actually, where
They did.
you're sitting in a theater watching the opening scene unfold. Yeah, there's lots of clever ways around this. 100%.
That's how I would do it instead of just the dirty bare minimum of like pure darkness with a screen that pops up in your face. Like that's
no fun. I mean, another thing, I guess, not so much immersion breaking, I guess, is just jarring, is all black loading screens where you don't know if your game's frozen. There's no audio playing. You're just sitting there and like you're just like in complete darkness, wondering if this game's gonna load or not.
Or with this like, yeah, totally.
And it doesn't happen a lot anymore, thank God, but it definitely happened more and more, or a lot more back in the day. I'm trying to think of, there's so many more examples of just things, like hands, forearms, and we've talked about so many things now. I'm actually losing track.
Oh, you just brought up something. Can I talk, or you?
No, you're good. I'm drawing a blank here, so absolutely talk.
Okay, I can't believe we haven't talked about this. Big immersion breaker. Loss of tracking.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like I can't believe we haven't talked about because that, and like like one of the biggest things I noticed when I jumped to I guess it was a Quest after PSVR 1 being my only VR experience was the improved like 360 tracking, and just like it was so much more immersive not having to worry about that aspect. It's funny, I know we have a big PSVR 2 following when no one's mentioned the cable. No, how has no one mentioned the cable in immersion breaking?
It's funny because I don't consider it immersion breaking. Like it definitely can get. I guess no, it can get in the way. But I guess I've worked around it. Like I just know how to work around.
I always work around it, but I did work myself into a bit of a mess the other day playing Walkabout, and it's mainly because I just moved my PSVR 2 down into the studio here, and I don't have it set up with like the whole like retractable cable that I normally have for my PC shit. And so I did notice the cable, and I was like, fuck, but it doesn't normally bother me, and I don't consider it immersion breaking because of all the immersiveness it brings me with like better visuals and not worrying about the headset battery, because that's also really fucking immersion breaking, is when you're like, oh my god, really, the batteries now low battery, extremely low battery. I guess we have to worry about battery life on these things, right? But and that can be a bit of a chore as well. But back to what I was originally saying is tracking loss, even on the PSVR 2, like I definitely noticed that the PSVR 2 is much pickier. You need to have,
for sure,
it likes bright lights. It doesn't like lights that are like right in its face. And it doesn't like reflections like on monitors. It's definitely pickier, and I really notice it. Some games more than others, but like after the fall, I found almost unplayable, personal preference on the PSVR 2, because it kept doing this weird thing where if I came in close to the controllers and it had an occlusion issue or some type of a tracking issue, it would like go quickly to a 2D screen.
Yeah.
And then like pop into, I was like, what? Like no, like wow. Like that, and it was happening enough that I was like, I can't play it like this.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's no reflection upon the game, but I'm currently playing Humanity, and I'm running into this issue, and it's DS4 only, so there's no occlusion thing happening, where the game will just kind of like lose its tracking for a second, and it's like the image gets still until it like the headset like finds itself again, and then fucking everything jumps back into 3D. And this is not an issue. It's an issue I've had before with PSVR 2, where if it just can't read the room, it just likes to have a heart attack for a second. So it's like, oh wait a second, no, I got my bearings. Like we're good. Sorry.
Like it was Triangular asked if anyone has weird, I don't know if he meant smearing, but loss of tracking and hitching on PSVR 2. Yes.
Oh yeah.
I have the tracking issues that I have on PSVR 2 have been like, I would say, yeah, like, I mean, I haven't done a full review on this on the system yet, guys. I was saying to Ryan, I think I might wait for like a year one review, like, or leading into the fall when I think is going to be the real push for PlayStation, and we'll be kind of out of this soft launch, and I want to see what they've ironed out, because I do think it's a firmware thing. But the PSVR 2 has some wonky tracking issues. It's like I said, it's pickier. It's much pickier than some. It does some things I really like as well, but it is quite picky around lighting. And I do get issues. I've talked about this before, where especially if you're like in a seated position, you kind of go like this. Sometimes the world moves a little bit. I really noticed it in Townsman. I noticed it in just about any game where I'm just kind of sitting and I kind of go like this, and the world kind of, it's not stable. That really irritates me. But I also have found quite a bit. Pavlov, actually, I'd be like right in the middle of a match, and all of a sudden, bloop, loss of tracking, pass through, and then I'd kind of go like this, and I'd be back in. And to me, that just sounds like a firmware thing.
Agreed.
Yeah, like it just needs to get a little bump up in intelligence or something to ignore certain things. But I definitely noticed that, and that's really immersion breaking. Like, it's one of the worst things. If I feel like a game, for me, the biggest is frame rate and tracking. If I feel like I'm fighting the game, I'm done with the game. Like, it ruins my day.
So one I always thought of that I always notice it is like low res background images in VR, like JPEG images for like skies and shit. So it's just like this beautiful, awesome world. Kayak VR, I guess, is one that you can definitely notice, especially in the night scenes where this whole world before you is just rendered beautifully. It's amazing. It's so sexy. And then you look up and you can literally see like the pixels on the moon, and you're like, "Whoa!" Like what happened? Like it's
What game story?
Kayak, but this is Kayak's
Oh,
just like like an extreme example of this. But like low res JPEG background images in any VR game, some games will hide it better than others.
yeah.
Runner on the Quest was actually a bad one. Runner on PSVR 2, not so much, because they just threw in so many assets, more buildings, everything else, that you basically
To
don't even
layer it.
see.
Yeah.
You don't even see it. But on the Quest, you get glimpses of it, especially on the water stage, where it's so low res. It's like, whoa, like where it takes you out of the game, because now you're looking at, it looks like someone just like smushed a picture right to your face. It's like, see, isn't it pretty now? And it's just like, no, it looks atrocious, actually. Not to take away from the fun in Runner, but it happens in games all the time, where even like a horror game where the game's awesome, you happen to look out a window and there's just like this JPEG image of like a city skyline. You're like, oh man, like it's
Yeah.
it's a killer. That one always irritates me when I notice it, because I mean, I just don't understand how you can put so much quality into like your surroundings, and then like this over pressing background image of like a mountain just looks like this garbage picture of a mountain in the, it doesn't make sense to me.
I
Um,
noticed it a lot on the Quest. Like, there's just with
oh, for
lots of
sure, for
lots
sure.
of flat backgrounds. We saw it on the PSVR too on certain games. I'm sure. I just really appreciate it when I look out into like the distance of a game and it feels like I'm really there. GT7 actually was fantastic in VR. Whereas, like, those feel like real environments out there. You had said Red Matter 2 was fantastic too, with just like almost endless draw distance. We
It's
were like, holy
insane.
shit. And I did look, I played enough of it briefly to just go like, yeah, I feel like I'm freaking Mars. This is amazing. Like, it looks awesome. Um, I mean, it's funny. We're spending so much time talking about what's immersion breaking. I feel like it's almost an entirely separate episode now about what
we just,
what adds
we
immersion.
just flipped this over. I love full body. I love when you can do full locomotion. It's kind of this episode already. We're just
Kind of, sort of, but we haven't even gotten to haptics. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, okay, that's gonna have to be another episode then. I did want to talk about a thing that actually Savage Gamer and I were talking about this before the episode, and I see he's brought it up again. And as did I think it was Shades there, and they were talking about they find it, one of the things that's very immersion breaking for them is if they're in a game and there's objects in the world and they can't pick them up and throw them, and interact with said objects. And I don't disagree with that, but here's my answer, and then you give me your feedback. I said to Savage, I'm like, I'm not gonna. I don't. It bothers me much less now. I feel like I've. And I don't mean this to sound like a dick comment to those who feel this way. I feel like I've moved past my VR tantrum days, like where early on in VR, everything I was like, yeah, wee! Picking up, throwing, everything must be thrown, and that was so fun because like, look, it was like that's the thing that blows everyone's minds in VR in the beginning. It's like, like it's like they're playing like like job simulator type shit, and that became much less of a thing for me. And I said to Savage, and I comments let me know. I said to him, Resident Evil 8, I know he's beaten it. I've beaten it twice. And I was like, would it be more immersive if you could have picked up and thrown the dishes? Like, would you give it a higher score because you could have? I wouldn't. I was like, I remember I took my gun. I was like, oh, I can't break that piece of pottery. And then I got over it. And then the game I can't hit that. But I didn't really care. I would say only where it's like I probably if it's a part of the game where I could have picked it up, instead I just looked at it and hit a button and it came up to my face. That's where I notice it. If it's something I could have interacted with or should have interacted with, but just to go around and just cause chaos and pick up and throw things, I'm kind of past that.
Well, I understand why too. I mean, it's. I mean, no one expects you to do that in like Assassin's Creed or anything like that, where you can just pick up everything around you and interact with every fork on a table, because that's just not part of the game. And just because you're in VR doesn't mean that they now have to have a full physics engine. This is something that like Half-Life Alyx, Bone Lab, Boneworks, these are things that are so rare in games this large, because it's it's a huge giant process to have everything rendered in the game just in case you decide you want to grab an orange. Like that's in like is sure that would that be amazing to have the option there? 100%. But like we're talking smaller dev teams, everything else. It's just not feasible. And I agree with you as far as like your VR honeymoon phase where you're like, yeah, grabbing everything and throwing it. And oh, what can I do? Oh, look, put a donut in the photocopier. All that wonderful jazz from back when we first started VR. Like I understand the need where, because you're in a virtual world, you automatically, as a new VR user, might just think like, what can I do now? Like, where can I go? And I think it's just tempering expectations and realizing exactly like how game development works. That being said, Fisherman's Tale, some puzzles you don't really know what you're doing. Like the game lets you do certain things. You have hands that you can shoot and grab things. So I grabbed a wine bottle. Woo! You can't do anything. It doesn't do anything. And I threw it on the ground, and it didn't break. And I got a little upset with that. Because if I throw glass on the grounds, it should break.
And that was the other part of the conversation that I had with Savage. I said he actually was the one that brought it up. It's kind of like I said, if you're gonna do it, do it. If you're not gonna do it, then don't do it. Like RE8 for the most part just is like, no, you just can't do those things. Like it was like you can open these. It had a little bit of rule breaking, and someone else will mention that. Like it was kind of like, yeah, you can open these doors, but not those. You got to hit X for those ones. I'm like, fuck you. Like you don't get to decide which ones I can open with, and it's like, and I can open them from like across the room too. I'm like, like that is immersion breaking. But what Savage had said was like, if I throw something and it doesn't make a sound, oh yeah, I'm instantly out. I'm like, this is a cheap piece of shit. Especially with the delayed sound.
We are winding this down, but another one that's really nitpicky is I can't stand doors that open both ways in VR. It's so dumb, but like Propagation has it. I think Saints and Sinners has it too, where you can either grab it and push or grab it and pull. And that's not the way doors work in the real world.
Okay, but here's the question for you. RE8. Doors, you come up to the door, and you kind of, I can't remember if you have to put your hand out or not, but they just open. Versus like actually having to do this. And I'm torn on that. I mentioned it.
Do they open towards you or away from you? Like do they open both ways?
I don't remember now.
Because it's just a dumb thing, but like
I understand why they do that, because they're trying to get away from
I totally understand. And they don't want you messing around. Like, they just want you to grab it and go. And it's just, I get it. But like, especially I guess in VR too, when you grab a door and like open it towards you, more often than not, it's like hitting your body because like the way you grab it isn't quite the right position. So you have to like back up to open the door, and it creates this whole other list of problems that happens because of.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you know, times in The Walking Dead where I'd open the door and I'd be like, oh, okay, pull my analog stick back. And
I mean, I just solved this problem. All doors in VR just open out. That's it. It's that easy. All doors in VR open out.
Yeah, but that's what they do a lot of.
No,
them.
but they open. But
that's where you get your double hinges, because then they open into
don't
the house and
get
then they
rid
open
of,
out
get
of the
rid of
house.
double hinges. I'm just saying they all have to open out now. That's it. Game over. Then this problem goes away.
But how do you decide what's out? Are you in the house and it opens out, or if you're coming into the house?
Ooh, shit.
That's what I'm saying. You get the double hinges. That's
Yeah.
what a lot of them do, because they're trying to avoid the pull back.
Right, I see that.
So I brought it up in Afterlife in my review.
Problem, so whatever, I mean, so I guess as a shortcut here, then, so whatever side of the door you're on, it only opens out. It don't. So if you're leaving a room, you have to push it open. If you're going back in the room, you have to push it open. It's the same motion, but then it prevents other issues from happening. Because then if you're pulling on a door, it just doesn't. This is a really.
I agree. No, Savage has got it. Everything Star Trek doors. But you know what? If you watch enough bloopers in Star Trek, they don't fucking work all the time either.
Well, it's because for the longest time it was just two guys pulling the doors open and closed, right?
I actually saw a recent behind the scenes thing on Star Trek Strange New Worlds or Discovery, and it's still not like you'd think they're using high technology. No. It's just a pulley system off the side of the door now. They go, Ree!
Yeah.
And they still mess it up because someone still has to do it for you.
And you know they made that noise, that psh, they made that noise because when
they cover the sound of
the door, it was like.
It's still there. It still sounds like wood clanking open in the behind the scenes. So I was gonna say, my Afterlife review, I talked about another janky thing, and it's often horror games because we've been playing those recently. Is opening drawers. It's like it's just always like it's just never, especially if they're on top of each other. You open one, then you got to close one to get the one below it. So like when I was in Afterlife,
which is like real life. But
in Afterlife, okay, I'm like, come on, Chris, learn. Always start from the bottom now. Bottom.
Oh, that's
middle,
funny.
Top.
Paradise was the same thing. Same thing. Start at the bottom, and then go through the list.
and so, but Afterlife, and I said this in my review. I'm like, I don't really know how I think about it. And I said that you reach for the drawer, and you basically, once you grab it, and you do actually have to grab it, it does the animation of opening. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. It feels way less janky, but then it goes back to my original point of I don't like it when you take control of my arm.
Yeah.
And so what I normally did is I out of habit, I always did the motion, and then I was like, but you're doing the movement, and it did feel pretty like smooth, right? But I will say
press X to open drawer. I mean, that's the worst.
That's crap, right? and like, but like that's what Res 8 has. Res 8 had it had like drawers that you opened, and then sometimes it would just be hit X. I was like, I don't understand how you chose this. It was like a spin of a wheel, but one game, it's the best and I remember it was the best game I ever noticed. It was Half-Life Alyx. The filing cabinets are fucking amazing. They feel like real filing cabinets. They feel like they're on rollers. You can bump them and they just go.
Yeah, totally.
Done. 10 out of 10.
All right, we got to shut this thing down because I think we could probably go for another hour. So you just keep coming with these little nitpicky.
It's a fun topic.
It really is. Actually, this is probably going to be a to be continued here because this has been a really fun episode. I've actually had a lot of fun.
And I have to say to you guys in chat, you guys have been awesome too. And it is one of those things. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm reading chat. I'm like, this is a conversation that only VR enthusiasts would get and love and participate in, because it's all those little things. I was like, oh yeah, when they do that, like the door opening, fuck them. It's like flat gamers don't have that conversation.
No, it's too funny. But yeah, this was a super fun episode. Salvador, super chat. You are awesome as always. This is your weekly shout out. And on that note, I guess as well, to all our patrons and everybody else who helps support our channel, just by watching everything else, I'm not closing this off right away, but now I'm just kind of just snowballing this. Thank you guys so much for being part of this chat and keeping us entertained and keeping you guys entertained. It's awesome. I love this little group of people we have. and you guys can all kick ass.
EAE, that's interesting. I mean, it doesn't really matter to anyone who doesn't matter, but I do have Silicon Rising. I never played it. I always meant to play it, and now you're saying it's not really, it doesn't work. That's a bunch of bullshit. In Demonic Wafflers, we are not a strange bunch. We are an awesome bunch. You know what? I feel bad for all the people that can't have these conversations. But in all seriousness, and I've said this in reviews, VR is still like funny enough. Even like Ryan said, was it 6, 7, 8 like years later that we've been playing VR? Is still the Wild West, and it is still so funny to me. I mean, it's better. It is better as far as like developers just like. I mean, think about it, Ryan. When you think about now, oh, Triangulator, dude, look at you. Very, thank you.
Triangulate, thank you, buddy.
You guys are amazing. It's really we take that, just so you guys know, like that money just goes right into games that we review for you guys. So we really appreciate that. And you know, our editing software prices. But what was I gonna say? Oh shoot, I lost my train of thought there. Shit, what was I talking about?
I wasn't listening. I was too busy. I was actually listening, so I wasn't listening to you. You were talking to them, so.
Oh man, oh crap, what was it I was talking about? Oh, it's gone. Shoot.
I will apologize in advance. I am going out of town again for work here, starting next week. So there's a pretty decent chance I won't be able to do the pod for the next 2 weeks. If that changes, obviously we'll let you know. And we will post on the socials regardless of what's happening. Chris may or may not have a special guest co-host for that time because it's a guaranteed 2 weeks and then a guaranteed 2 more weeks shortly after that again. That being said, when I do come back, the code giveaways will continue. So, I mean, don't forget about us because I mean, the last few episodes we've dropped, I mean, I've probably dropped like $200 worth of codes, if not more. And there's some questionable codes I've given away for sure, but there's also some absolute bangers. I mean, so yeah, stay tuned, guys. Especially, I have so many Steam codes to give away. Oh my god.
So that was my sorry, I lost my train of thought. I remember what I was going to say. It has gotten much better since we started reviewing games. As like it is more likely than not that we open up a game and you bring up the settings and there are options for click turning, smooth turning, how fast, blinders off, full locomotion, height adjustment, calibration techniques. I mean, those things are much more common, but we are still not at the point where, and I think this is how I'd referenced it when I talked about it years ago doing reviews. I wish we were at a point where, like in the flat gaming, if you're putting on a first-person shooter, you know, like if it's a controller, you know how like the left stick is forward, backwards, and strafe. The right stick is turning. Square is reload. Triangle changes guns. You know, like circle is crouch. X is jump. Like it's kind of like those are the things. Like we, for the most part, like the gaming, there's a standard in place that, and when you pick up a controller, you kind of know how it's gonna work. And when a game does something stupid like reloads or like R1, you're like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
This feels weird. And VR still hasn't gotten to that point. Like, there's still just so many developers that are just like, well, what about this? And then,
well, it's like switching. It's like switching your grip and your trigger button, and just like remapping those.
You know what? I complained about that a lot on Pavlov, and then another recently too. And I don't remember what shooter it was. And I do know why they did it. I do understand that they are trying to make it so that like the grip mechanic of the gun, like when you're is nothing else. Like it's not getting in the way of any of your reload mechanic and like the chambering, so you're not accidentally like grabbing the gun. I guess your hardcore shooters would probably disagree with me with that. It still feels really weird when I'm grabbing ammo like with my like pink pointer finger. Like,
yeah.
Just this clip. Oh man, so fun. Guys, we need to wrap it up. I actually really don't want one. But yeah, we'll see what happens with next week. I think I'm probably going to keep the show going.
Like I said, maybe there's a chance I could be here, but I don't want to make promises.
Ryan always runs the shows. This is the thing. Ryan's kind of the producer seducer, and And I mean, I know how to do it and this and that to a certain degree, but he's got it down to an art, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's a messy masterpiece.
So, guys, just a quick heads up of a few things that are coming on the channel. I got this. This is VR Cover's new comfort strap.
You're backwards, but they get it.
Okay, for the PSVR 2. I'm like backwards. I was like, oh, does this help? No, that doesn't help. Anyways, comfort strap for the PSVR 2, guys. Was for the full front, the full back. For those of you who have any issues with comfort, it also has a top strap and everything. And VR Cover, like this is kind of they're kind of one of the guys. So I'm curious to see how that works. I don't find the PSVR 2 super uncomfortable, but this looks like it's also supposed to grabs your sweat. It won't feel as like wet and sloppy on your head. That actually, I wouldn't mind. You can wash it. That's kind of nice. So I'm gonna do a full review for that. That's coming, guys. And yeah, there's a few other things along the way, but I guess I can't talk about. So Salvador and
Triangulator.
and what triangulator? Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that.
We really do appreciate that.
And if the rest of you are interested in joining our Patreon, then that's a thing that you can do. Ryan and I were talking about that. We definitely need to develop that to give back a little bit more. So we'll get on that. EA, it's nice to see that you joined us. You had missed last week, so thank you for making the cut. Guys, that's it for us. We're already running a little bit over, but please hit that like button on your way out the door if you wouldn't mind. Always helps with the algorithms. And go watch Ryan's for
Another Fisherman's Tale, because no one's watching the review.
Go watch. Puzzle games are a tough sell. It's spoiler free. It's actually, you know what? That looked pretty cool. You know what? It reminded me a little bit of. I was getting some Bone Lab vibes with the way that they had decided to not really, but in the way that they had taken like their first game, and then for the second game they'd really decided to like bring in like body parts interactions, like the way that like Bone Lab was kind of like, oh, you're small, you're big and strong, and like the way that like they used. You could just like, yeah, I'm gonna throw my head because I need a camera over
there. Yeah, it's cool.
I like that. It looks cool. So go check that out. And I think we're out because otherwise I'm just gonna start rambling.
Yep, I agree. Say goodbye, Chris.
Goodbye, Chris.
All right, later, all.
Later, guys.
I have to give that ending a second now because it seems to always cut it off.